that ass back like a boom, 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 boom.
How are we, folks? Just getting back to the second half of what I will call a county final show for this edition of the DriveThru SportsShow. When last I spoke to you, which was on Saturday evening, I had just made mention of the victories of St. Vincent's in the Junior Football Championship and Trim in the Intermediate Football Championship. And of course, at that time, the Senior Football Championship doubleheader in Park Talton on the Sunday was still waiting in the wings. Of course, as you will all know by now, my own club, St. Peter's Dunboyne, were involved in both fixtures on the day, with the ladies up against a very experienced Centrestown team, and the lads, of course, playing Wolf Tones. As I'm sure any of you that have followed the site during the week will know by now, it was a half a good day's work for us, with the girls winning comprehensively on a scoreline of 323 to 19, while the lads unfortunately come out on the wrong side of what was a particularly dour battle with Wolf Tones by the only goal of the game by Sarah O'Finnegan being the difference between the sides at the end, as the men from Kilberry held on by 1-9 to 9 points. Now, as it were, let's get the uncomfortable business out of the way first of all. The men's final was an absolutely desperate disappointment from a Dunboyne point of view. I think I wouldn't be alone in saying that by any means. But perhaps the most disappointing part of it was that, to use a phrase that I actually don't like myself, but it's definitely the most apt in this situation, it felt like our lads simply didn't turn up on the day, that they didn't play anywhere near to the level of football which they're able, and that's perhaps the most disappointing part of it, is not that we were beaten. Wolf Tones were the better team on the day. I would have absolutely no qualms about admitting that whatsoever, and they were deserving of their victory, but I think their victory was made perhaps a lot easier than it should have been by the fact that our lads, for whatever reason, underperformed so badly. And I know, as Ruby Walsh said in a television interview many years ago, if my aunt was kitted out differently, she'd be my uncle. But it was one of these situations where I would feel that if the game was played the following day or a week later or whatever, that there may well have been a different outcome, but there could be no qualms as to the result on the day, because for whatever reason, once Aaron O'Finnigan's goal went in, at no stage did we look like we were going to win it, even though on two occasions we managed to pull our way back into the game. In the first half, immediately after the goal, three quick points from the Lowndes brothers, Craig and Stewart and Donal Lenihan, had got us back to parity. And even though Tones had the upper hand for the remainder of the first half and deservedly led by 1-5 to 4 points at half time, when we come out after half time and registered the first three scores of the second half, and did so quite quickly, in fact, I would have thought, and I'm sure most of the Dunboyne contingent, either present or watching or listening from abroad or whatever, would have thought and expected that our lads would have kicked on after that, but for whatever reason it didn't materialise. And I think, and again, this is not a matter of making excuses, this is just calling it the way I see it. I would feel that the second half water break couldn't have come at a worse time from a Dunboyne point of view, because we had just trimmed the deficit down to 17 to 8 points and seemed to be at long last becoming a little bit sure-footed in the game. And for a brief period it looked like the possibility of us working our way back into the game and into the contest looked a distinct possibility, but a combination of profligacy and ponderance with the ball played right into the hands of Michael McDermott's team and actually halted whatever bit of progress that it may have appeared we were about to dig out for ourselves, with the result that all the purple and gold had to do really was sit back and soak up whatever we threw at them, and then go ahead and catch us on the break, which, to be fair to them, they duly did. And Keane Ward and his younger brother Caelan knocked over the 2 points, which sent us to our Waterloo and sent the Keegan Cup to Kilberry for a second winter's holiday down there, a first in 15 years. And certainly from this corner, there's absolutely no arguments. The Tones were deserving winners on the day, and hopefully they'll go out now in the Leinster Club and give a good account of themselves at the very least against whoever comes out of Dublin. As I say, it would be impossible to mask how disappointing it was from a Dunboyne perspective, but I would like to think that there are plenty of reasons to be hopeful going forward. I mean, we seen what was basically our Junior D team beating Ratoath in the Premier 6 final on the Friday night, and the second team winning their competition, beating Dunshaughlin the previous week Both teams mostly, well, the Premier 6 team completely made up of young players and a fair smattering of youth on the Premier 1 team as well. And presuming, and I don't know this at the time of broadcast, I don't know this for certain, but presuming there will be a under 20 championship later in the year, it should leave us very well placed to field a fairly strong team in that particular competition. However, just for a final word on the senior game from last Sunday, I think what really told was that Wolf Tones had absolutely done their homework with regard to how we went about setting ourselves up in that they very obviously dropped Stephen Shepherd back in front of our full back line with the explicit duty to cut off the supply of possession going into our inside forward line, and for that, from that point of view, it certainly worked a treat for them. And if there was one disappointing thing about our abject performance, if you want to call it that, it was that when our number one game plan of trying to hit the full forward line with early ball was disrupted, we didn't appear to have a backup strategy at all. But look, it was a bad day, and well, the bad half of the day, and as I said in some of the written content I've done since the game, we had played in 3 senior football finals and won the 3 of them before last Sunday. So we were always sort of going to lose one at some stage, I'm sure. Now, there's never a nice time for it to happen, and I, for one, certainly didn't think it was going to happen last weekend, but it has now. And I think if the bunch of lads are kept together and people's heads stay anyway right, it can and hopefully will be the type of thing that lads can, with the fullness of time, use to their advantage, for want of a better way of describing it. And there's 2 things that come to mind. One, that what doesn't break you will always often leave you stronger. And secondly, now I know from this point of view it's a bit tricky, but I just think of the old saying that you often hear: you have to lose one before you win one. Now, of course, most of the Dunboyne lads that were on duty there last weekend had won one back in 2018, but I think there's nothing like a defeat to galvanise a group and be in such a position that it can actually be used to their advantage as a driving force going forward for the future. But there's no doubt at the minute as to who the driving force going forward in Meath Ladies Club football are at present, because the Dunboyne girls, as was mentioned at the top of this piece, produced an outstanding and astounding display of football against Seneschalstown in the ladies' final, which was the curtain raiser to the senior men's, running out victors on a quite remarkable score of 323 to 19. Now, at this point, it should be pointed out that while the score would, of course, indicate that Dunboyne did win with quite a bit in hand, which they did, to be fair to Seneschalstown, even though Dunboyne had plenty in hand on the day, I would feel that the Yellow Force Club had shown enough to indicate that they may well return to being a force to come within the club game in Meath before too long at all. At the end of the day, as the Dunboyne captain Fiona O'Neill very graciously but rightly pointed out, Seneschalstown were the team that we and many other aspiring ladies teams in the county looked up to as regards inspiration, due to the complete dominance which they and St. Ultan's wielded over the ladies' game in Meath for the better part of 2 decades, backboned by the likes of Geraldine Sheridan and her 2 daughters, Mary and Mina, and Grania Nulty and Louise McKeever and Dervla O'Carroll, and I could go on and on. Fiona Mahon, I could be here listing top class players until Christmas, but they set the bar and set the benchmark that all other clubs had to, at the very least, aspire to, if we wanted to get anywhere near the levels which both Seneschalstown and St. Ultan's had set. As I wrote in the piece that I'm sure some of you will have seen on the website, in the wake of Sunday's game, Dunboyne and so many more teams like us were inspired by the best, and thanks be to God, for the last while at least, we have been able to go on and emulate them to some extent. Now, the last part of what I just said there, to some extent, is the crucially important bit, for the simple reason that the level of success which St. Ultan's and Seneschalstown garnered for themselves in the last 20 years or so has been absolutely unprecedented, and I find it very doubtful, I think, that anyone will ever get near achieving what those 2 great teams did when they were in their pomp. But there's no denying the fact that for now at least, it is Dunboyne's time to shine, in that when one considered it was only at the back end of 2014, 13 or 14, I'm not sure which, that decision was made to re-affiliate an adult team, and having won the junior football championship in 2015 and gone on to win the Leinster and the All-Ireland, and did the same with the intermediate in 2017, while there was no doubting that the potential was there to make a big impact at senior level. Thinking it was possible, and maybe inwardly among ourselves at least, knowing it was possible is one thing, but you still have to go out and do it. And even up to last Sunday, I know the man on the street, a woman on the street, and child on the street were probably saying, sure, it's a done deal for the Boylan. Sure, they have Vicky Wall and Emma Duggan, undoubtedly the two best lady footballers in the country at the moment. But, club football and county finals and all that, it just doesn't work out that way. Yes, we did go on and record a comprehensive victory, and one which we have every right to be delighted with and very proud of. But the girls, and when I say the girls, I mean the panel of what must number near 40, I imagine, and their mentors, Brendan Quinn, Gary Byrne, Alan Brown, John Blaney, and there's probably a couple, there are, of course, Lena O'Doherty and Breach Thompson. There was no doubt the talent that was contained in the panel, but the girls still had to put the effort in, the same as every other team in the county and in any county aspiring to win a county championship. And they had to go out and win their matches and whatever it was, and they did that. And thankfully and gloriously, from a Dunboyne point of view, it did work out that it went as we hoped and, dare I say, expected it would. But there are absolutely no guarantees in sport whatsoever, or in anything in life indeed. And when Centralstown led by 5 points to 3 at the first water break, there would have been a certain degree of concern within the Dunboyne camp, and a realisation that they would have to up their game. And there's no doubt after the first half water break, they definitely did up their game, with the result that they outscored the team in blue and gold by 7 points to 2 for the remainder of the first half, leaving themselves in front by 10 points to 7 at half time. And without wanting to sound blasé about it, they come out after half time and, of course, proved what they really could do when they come out and kick 3-13 after the break to run out resounding winners. So they now, of course, go on to represent Meath in the Leinster Club Football Championship, which, from a personal point of view, is an absolute godsend, as it will shorten the winter for a little bit for every week that they remain in the competition, which hopefully will go for a good while. But they are very special times to be in and around, or even loosely hooked onto ladies football in Dunboyne, because what these girls have achieved in a little over 5 years has been nothing short of unprecedented, and it's just been glorious to be around, and completely uplifting to the whole village, even to people who may not have been otherwise inclined to GAA and or to sport of any kind. But what they've achieved to date, it's nothing short of astounding. And I suppose the great thing from a Dunboyne point of view is that the inclination and earnest hope would be that I personally, and now, and I wouldn't have seen I wouldn't have seen near enough of the ladies football as I should have done, but hopefully that will be something that will be altered going forward. But even from seeing what I have of it, and being fairly well in tune with what's been going on and their monumental achievements, I would feel that there's even more to come from this bunch of players. But for now, look, what they've already achieved would be beyond the wildest dreams of most people. Any week they can make the winter a bit shorter is a good week in my book. As I say, what they achieved last Sunday was an absolutely astounding accomplishment in its own right. And I would be quietly confident that this story has many more chapters to be added into it yet. So hopefully I'm not putting the mockers on the situation here when I say please stay tuned.